Well, the next morning we join up again with our guide Valentina, who is going to take us to a ceramic studio. We're going to the atelier of a craftsman who's been in business for 50 years, making ceramics for different businesses in the Florence area.
Please follow me this way.
Carrying on an old tradition in Florence of ceramic artwork. Goes back to the time of Della Robbia and earlier.
You know, that is clay, yeah? You just take the clay. He has prepared, first of all, the drawing, the star you can see right there. You know, during Middle Ages, Florence, as I told you before, was organized in guilds, in corporations. And that was the corporation, the owners of hotels, you know? The work is already done. It has just to do definitions with that instrument, the tool.
Then we had a look at the clay, which comes from a nearby area.
It has to be very soft. You can feel it. In this way, you can just manipulate it.
Questa è la classica Maiolica.
This is the classical Maiolica. Everything is made, of course, by hand and painted, and that's it. The decoration you see, it's a typical Florentine decoration dating back to the 15th century. This is the classical Florentine red. He's going to put it in the oven, and the color will become, I mean, as an orange color, as the one, brown orange, as the one you see right there.
So the reason why they do that first firing is to harden the clay and make it a transfer, so it'll never, if you put water into it or anything else, it'll never dissolve, it'll never go back. It also helps ensure that when you put the color on it, the glaze on it, that it won't explode. It's gone through its own transformation.
That was Pete Hansen explaining some of the finer points of kiln work. He's the teacher on the tour. He's a member of the Punahou art faculty and teaches pottery making, among other things. And some of the students have actually made ceramics themselves, so they're getting that much more out of the visit. And we're all learning some interesting insights from our meeting with this local artist.
He's still learning. He never stops learning, guys. After 50 years, he's still learning. You really learn a lot making mistakes. You know, there was a philosopher in Greece, his name was Socrates, and his, let's say, proverb was, I know that I don't know. Va bene. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let's go.
And then we walked through more of these quiet back streets to the major church of Santa Croce.
And the church where we are now dates back. It was started in 1294 and finished in the mid of the 14th century. As far as the style is concerned, let's say that it's a compromise between Gothic style. You recognize that, first of all, by the pointed arches. But if you simply have a look at the ceiling, you have a wooden ceiling, and this is typical of Romanesque churches.
There are many important burials in Santa Croce, including that of Galileo, the great scientist who died in 1642. And the tomb of Michelangelo is here. There are also a lot of important artworks, including frescoes by Giotto showing early use of perspective. And then we visited the adjacent Pazzi Chapel.
The interior of the chapel is made on the project by Brunelleschi. Also, you have this alternation gray stone and white plaster. This is typical of the style of Brunelleschi, a very neat, clear geometry. You can really see you have the square shape and also the same pattern repeated on all the sides in a sort of a very symmetrical and, let's say, harmonious structure. Inside you have these medallions in glazed terracotta by Luca della Robbia, representing the apostles. The dome is divided in 12 parts. You know why 12? Because 12 were the apostles. So always you have a religious meaning, a symbolic meaning. In the pendentives, the symbols of the four evangelists, St. Matthew, St. Mark, then you have St. John and St. Luke. Andrea Pazzi, the Pazzi family, was a very important family. They were the antagonists of the Medici family. Really were against the Medici family that Andrea Pazzi, together with the help of the Pope, organized a conspiracy against the Medici family. And they wanted to kill the two important members of the Medici, Lorenzo and Giuliano, you know where? Inside the cathedral. The day of Easter, the 26th of April, 1478, during the communion, when everybody were involved in the prayers, they stabbed and killed Giuliano, not Lorenzo, because Lorenzo escaped and he hid inside the sacristy. In this way, he was safe.
Santa Croce has two beautiful cloisters and a large refectory containing more works of art.
That's really an important piece by Cimabue, and you can really see Jesus Christ suffering. Unfortunately, this crucifix was one of the victims of the flood in 1966. The flood completely damaged the crucifix. In front of you, you have a beautiful Last Supper, because this was the refectory.
The Pazzi Chapel and cloister and refectory used to be a separate admission charge at Santa Croce, but now it's all included in the main admission to the church, so don't miss it. And then it's time for some more gelato. Oh, you can't beat this for a nice pick-up snack here in Florence. It's delicious and cool and refreshing. It's a different kind of ice cream in Italy. The gelato is smoother and a little softer, a little more bursting with flavor than the typical ice creams that we've got in America.
The chapel was built by Brunelleschi just at the beginning of the 15th century, and the deposition is very beautiful. Look first of all at the colors, very sharp colors. And also, Pontormo was a Mannerist artist, like Parmigianino. And even there, you really see how the figures can keep their balance. You really have twisted, contorted figures. And Mannerism is that period which really, what is important is the manner, is the style, the form more than the content.
Then we paid a visit to the Pitti Palace with its impressive arts collection. And already it's time again for lunch back at our hotel. Just after lunch, we paid a visit to this pharmacy of Santa Maria Novella. It's a perfumery with potpourris and soaps and fragrant items.
You can see in the windows the old instruments, scales, thermometers. On my right you have a mortar with a puzzle. They date back to the period of Renaissance, 1400, 1500. So the pharmacy stays open until 7:30 today. You can see a beautiful view of the cloister of Santa Maria Novella. It's one of the largest cloisters in Florence.
The pharmacy is in an old chapel that was built in 1332, and it was later redecorated in a neo-Gothic style. And then we walk a few blocks over to the Duomo, where we learn about the history of the cathedral.
The dome of the cathedral, guys, was built by Brunelleschi. It's really the most important architect in Florence, as I told you yesterday, in this period. It took him 16 years, 16, to build the dome. He started it in 1418 and finished it in 1434. But what is important is the first dome in history of modern architecture, which was built without the need of a wooden sustaining frame during the construction. In other words, it was built without scaffoldings. How was that possible? The bricks were put in horizontal rings, in horizontal courses, and they were bonded together in a herringbone pattern, like this. In this way, they discharged the weight the ones on the others. You had to figure it was a self-growing, supporting structure. If you want, you can climb up 463 steps, no elevator. I'm sorry, but Brunelleschi didn't project it for us. Yeah? You can see there are people at the right top, and from right there, you can enjoy a beautiful view overlooking the whole city. And the baptistry was used to baptize children. Children were baptized inside here until 1968. The baptistry is famous, first of all, for the three doors. And we are going to see the doors of paradise sculptured by Lorenzo Ghiberti. And he started these doors around 1402, 03, and he finished them in 1423. And you have the doors, the material is bronze, divided in 28 panels, which represent the life of Jesus Christ. This is the first door sculptured by Lorenzo Ghiberti. After these doors, Lorenzo Ghiberti sculptured the very famous doors of paradise, the ones in front of the cathedral. Okay? In front of you, you have the very famous doors of paradise. Michelangelo was so impressed by the beauty of these doors, he considered them worthy to be at the entrance of paradise. For this reason, even today, we call these doors the doors of paradise. They were sculptured by Ghiberti. It took him 27 years to sculpture these doors. He started them in 1425, finished them in 1452. 10 panels with a rectangular shape, and these panels represent the episodes of the Old Testament. You can see how the figures close by us are really a high relief, full rounded. They seem to come out from the frame, whereas the figures farther away are more flattened. In this way, Lorenzo Ghiberti gives us the depth, the different planes, the perspective, yes?
When it was first constructed in the Gothic period, this cathedral was the largest building in Europe. And the dome was inspired partly by that of the Pantheon in Rome, but it was Brunelleschi's own very special creation. Well, I think already it's time for another gelato stop. Gotta have this stuff at least once a day, maybe twice. Keep those taste buds perked up and keep the energy flowing. We still have more to see today. We have covered most of the city highlights already, and now we're going to pay a visit inside the Palazzo Vecchio. There's a copy of the Cupid by Verrocchio of Puto. And inside the Palazzo, the most amazing room is this Hall of the Grand Assembly.
Now, we are simply underneath this beautiful loggia, which was built at the end of the 14th century in order to house the official ceremonies. Now, this loggia, let's say, is a beautiful museum of statues. You had the rape of the Sabine women sculptured by Jean Boulogne. This is the original in marble. You have Hercules fighting against the centaur by the same artist. We are at the end of the 1500s.
Well, that wraps up our visit to Florence.